Finally, in the last section, you guys, we're just going to discuss radiation hazards and exposure to radiation. I'm going to share a video with you in this playlist that's going to be it's going to show you some really neat examples of when and how you're exposed to radiation and how it can change. But know that you are exposed to some type of radiation every single day. Radiation can be dangerous to humans because of its ability to ionize matter. Okay, it's hard to explain what that means, but think about it like this. When you have alpha particles, beta particles, gamma particles with very high energies, they can hit other atoms, other nuclei, and knock things around. And when that happens, it can just completely mess up what that atom is supposed to do. It can change it into something else. It can throw off everything. And if that happens a whole bunch to some type of tissue or substance, well, that tissue or substance is just going to die. It's not going to be able to continue to do what it's supposed to do when you start having a whole bunch of carbon atoms getting changed into nitrogen atoms because they've been hit by electrons or hit by alpha particles and you've lost different pieces of nuclei. All of that to say that being exposed to ionizing radiation is bad. But that doesn't stop you from being exposed to it every day. Just it's generally really, really small amounts. Likely from some things that you're thinking of and from some things that you're not thinking of. For example, I mentioned potassium 40 in the last example of the last section. Potassium 40 is naturally occurring in bananas. It is also naturally radioactive, as you'll see in the video that you'll watch. It's not that radioactive, but it is just a little bit. If you are a person who works around things that generate a lot of radiation, like particle accelerators or X-rays, there's an amount of radiation that you are allowed to have based on what is essentially OSHA regulations per year. Any more than that, and you start to get to a point where you can damage your body. Exposure to radiation over long periods of time can cause cancers because it's changing the fundamental makeup of your atoms. And the biggest problem with radiation is that it could be right next to you and you would never know unless you were looking for it. It's almost completely undetectable. We use things like Geiger counters to detect radioactive particles. All it is that's doing is essentially catching the particles out of the air. If you don't know to look for them, then you would never know they were there. And that's why radiation can be so dangerous. If for some reason you are ever in a situation where you happen to see a meteorite come from space and land on the ground, that meteorite is worth a ton of money and it is also extremely radioactive. So figure out a way to get your money, but don't touch it. Or bring it home with you. Now, most of the radiation that you're exposed to is what's part of this natural background. Things come from cosmic rays, which is essentially from the sun, high energy particles from the sun. You have nuclides in rocks in the soil and in the air. Okay, there's still some radiation left over from the nuclear tests of the 50s and 60s. Small amounts. There's small amounts of radiation in water. There's radon in the ground. There's small amounts of radiation emitted from other people. And there's some amounts that are emitted from occupational exposures. But the biggest that you're exposed to as a human is generally from things like medical x-rays or some type of nuclear medicine like chemotherapy. Those are generally intentional. And what you won't usually do is have 1,000 x-rays in a year. Your doctor wouldn't allow that. You have one a year, maybe a couple more if something happens, but never thousands. You don't ever go have an x-ray every day, because you would actually start to suffer effects of radiation poisoning if you got too many x-rays. And so your textbooks discusses a little bit further in terms of x-rays and the different types and how much exposure you're actually getting to radiation. But do know that it is there naturally, and the video that I've added here will help you understand some more natural sources of radiation. Just be aware that there is some parts of the video that make a really high-pitched, somewhat annoying sound. So just be aware of that as you're watching the next video. If you have any questions this week, you guys please feel free to reach out to me. And you will likely see the next few weeks be somewhat in this format with the examples mixed in throughout, because of the videos that I believe I've lost. So if there's anything that I can help you with this week, please let me know. And I will talk to you guys next week.